Welcome to the Nobel Prize Teacher Summit, live from Stockholm, Sweden, at the Nobel Prize Museum. I'm Annika, and I'm the Education Director here at the Nobel Prize Museum. And I have some wonderful colleagues with me here at the museum. And we have Lotta, who is the audience's voice. So you can send in questions to Lotta, and she will ask our speakers your questions. You can both use nobelprizemuseum.se/questions, or you can write your questions at Facebook in the live stream. And we also have an audience here, a very small audience because of the corona situation. So very welcome to the teachers that are here, like 25 teachers. Welcome. And also I have my colleagues Pontus and Gustav and Erika, and you'll see more of them later in this program. So, the Nobel Prize shows that really great ideas, hard work and cooperation really can change the world. And this week we call it Nobel Calling Week, because this week, every day, we have gotten a new Nobel Prize. It's really cool. And that's why we have this teacher conference, the Nobel Prize Teacher Summit. Usually, we used to gather teachers from all over the world, but today we do it digitally, just like everything else this very strange year. Alfred Nobel, he had a clear vision when he established the prize. He wanted the prize to be for those who conferred the greatest benefit to humankind. And you will hear much more about this year's prizes later on in this program. So the Nobel Prize exhibitions that we have here at the museum, and sometimes also in other countries. We have our digital channels reaching over 100 million people worldwide during 1 week of the Nobel Prize announcement week. And we have programs and teacher activities and school programs here at the museum. And everything is in the same spirit of the Alfred Nobel spirit for the greatest benefit of humankind. So the world is facing a lot of challenges. It's war, climate change, famine, injustice, inequality, and right now an ongoing pandemic. Too many people have been forced to leave everything behind and seek refuge in a new country. But how does migration affect education? And what can teachers do to promote a sustainable future? And is it possible to teach the spirit and the capacity to act? So that's some things that we will talk about today. Teachers matter, education matters, and that's why we choose to enlighten the role of teachers. So many Nobel laureates say that a teacher was really crucial for them when they grew up. But we also know that teachers have a really tough job. I know because I was a teacher before. I know everything about that. So we also want to give you knowledge and inspiration and the power to feel that you are important and it's really the work that you do. So I think we have a wonderful slide coming up with a world map. Karin, do you think you can show it? Yeah, because usually when it's not Corona time, we have teachers traveling from Bangladesh, from Zimbabwe, from Colombia, from Myanmar, from France, the US, everywhere. And they come here to meet and to discuss for 4 days. And many of those teachers are actually with us right now. I know that they are there because I contact with so many of them through our network of teachers. So to all of you around the world, I want to say just welcome to this event. And please write something in the comments. So Lotta, do we have any participants from different parts of the world?
I just wrote the question, hi everyone, where are you watching from? So now I'm expecting all the viewers to read where they come from. I haven't had so many yet, but let's wait and see.
Yeah, let's wait and see. And we also have greetings from them later on in the program. We have very nice pictures and stories from Bangladesh and from India and from Africa. So we'll hear more about that. So the pandemic affects us all, no matter how privileged we are or if we are rich or poor. But one thing we know is that these challenges, of course, affects fragile people much more. And the relation between the pandemic and migration is also something we need to talk about. So we'll deepen our knowledge today and discuss complex issues about these things. But first, I would like to invite my boss to the stage. So give a warm hand to Museum Director Erika Lanner.
Thank you. Thank you, Annika. And once again, a warm welcome to all of you. This very particular, exciting and overwhelming week. When here in Stockholm and in Oslo, this year's Nobel Prizes are announced, magic calls are received, often in the middle of the night. Astonishing achievements that have made us as human beings more insightful, more enlightened, and that has placed the importance of science and humanism in the spotlights that they truly deserve. These achievements are awarded this week. And here, this week goes under the name, as Annika mentioned, Nobel Calling Stockholm. And that represents that we're inviting all of you to be puzzled and heartwarmed with us by the achievements that have been awarded this year's Nobel Prizes. So together with the City of Stockholm, we at the Nobel Prize Museum offer a wide range of activities all over town, and we do that together with the libraries, the universities, public stages in various parts of the town. And a couple of days remain now of this year's Nobel Calling Stockholm, and you can still take part of tonight's program at Kulturhuset, the Peace Friday, where Beatrice Fihn and Gustav, who you will meet in a moment, are two of the participants. And a special feature this year is the quite spectacular outdoor cinema that we offer in the middle of Stockholm, its most central place, Sergels Torg, and where we show short documentaries 24/7, all the way through October 12th on Monday. Short documentaries about earlier years' Peace Prize laureates, and these are quite touching and moving films that have been directed by Academy Award-winning director Orlando von Einsiedel, and the cinema is an artwork in itself, designed by artist Fredrik Paulsen. So I recommend to all of you to have a chance to see that before Monday, or on Monday at the latest. And at the heart of all of these activities of Nobel Calling Stockholm 2020 is the Nobel Prize Museum, where we have gathered here today for this Teacher Summit online. And for that reason, it's my privilege to welcome up on stage my colleague and Nobel Prize historian and expert, Gustav Källstrand. Sorry? Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
And you will help us, Gustav, by commenting and addressing with a few words what has actually happened today, because when we have seen Nobel Prize announcement all week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and today, we just found out that the UN World Food Programme received this year's Peace Prize. So I'd like to ask you, why was this program awarded? It's a food program. What is the link between food and peace?
Yeah, that's, of course, a very good question. But I think that the answer is also quite clear. For the Nobel committees, they say that, well, first of all, there's a very practical link between hunger and peace, and that's the fact that which the committee pointed to, that hunger is used as a weapon in war, a way to stabilize a region or a country to make sure that people don't get food. That will disorganize the whole thing. But there's also the fact that the Nobel Peace Committee does not only look at peace as the absence of war. Peace is something positive that you build. And in order to build this, you have to have stability. And that means not having starvation in a country and not having hunger. So make sure that people have food is a good way to build stability. So those connections between hunger and peace. And I should also mention that the Nobel Committee has also mentioned that international collaboration is really important this year for this year's prize. And that's something that we see throughout the history of the Nobel Prize, that international organized collaboration is seen as the key to success. That is the ideological driving force of the Nobel Peace Prize in a sense.
Okay, so and this UN World Food Program, what do we know about it? What is its structure? How does this program work?
It's a quite large organization, and of course it's part of the UN, so it's a large program. It has about 14,000 employees, and out of those 14,000, 90% are field workers. So it's also a very active organization. And what they do out in the field, they work both short and long term. So in the short term, they make sure that if there's been a disaster, for example, they make sure that people get food. But also, if there's after a disaster, after the first period is over, then they make sure to rebuild food supply chains. And so the next step is to make sure that countries have or regions have a more robust food supply in order to avoid disruptions in future from future conflicts or disasters. So it's both short and medium and long-term goals that they have. So I think it's quite clear again that the Peace Prize is awarded to something that is very much, as it says in the will of Alfred Nobel, to benefit to humankind.
Thank you so much, Gustav, for guiding us through the new Nobel Peace Prize that was just announced today. And with that, as it has been time to introduce our first speaker of today. He is an associate professor at the Department of Education of Stockholm University. His research interests are migration and education, and the role that schools play for the integration of refugees and immigrants. The educational system and teachers can play an important role to counteract the polarization that often characterize the debate about immigration. And our next speaker has highlighted the importance of teachers' voices in the general immigration debate in society. And now he's here to talk about teachers as actors of change. Give a warm hand to Ali Osman.
It was really a challenge in 14 minutes to try to cover this extremely dividing and difficult subject. But I'll try my best. And I believe that teachers are the vanguards of enlightenment and humanistic ideals. That's the point of departure that I have in presenting today my talk. And I depart from certain assumptions. Sometimes we forget that Sweden, like most European countries, is diverse. And this is not fake news or fake fact, it is an empirical fact. And sometimes I think people forget that. But the content and the nature of the discourse of migration and integration is no longer a debate of ideas, values, and visions. It's not about how we can live together as people with diverse values and belief, that we don't kill each other. Oh, is it the next? And my third assumption is that the discourse is no longer conducted as a deliberative dialogue in a democratic tradition, but is a cacophony of emotions, opinions, which is not always based on fact, knowledge, or an ideology for the public good. It is what I mean here, it is the discourse of migration and integration, whether it is in Sweden, whether it is in the United States, or whether in France, is about dividing people. Is it about creating the other, the enemy within, or the enemy without? In general, the discourse is characterized by constructing migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers as a problem, and that their cultures are at odds with liberal Western values. What do I mean liberal and illiberal cultures? And that's the point, the essence of the debate today. For me, illiberal cultures are defined as people or collective that are far from enabling autonomy for their members and which violate the liberal principle of individual freedom and equality. That's why we're always proud. Talk about a lot of issues related to the culture of the other, the illiberal cultures. And if you look, I try sometimes to think what are the essence or the different position of the migration debate in Sweden, but also in other countries, or integration. And these are, I can sum it in 3 positions. Those who believe in different forms or types of multiculturalism, diversity is good. Those that believe that people from illiberal cultures can adapt by using punitive and non-punitive disciplinary measures, or this continuum of integration and assimilation thinking. And on the third, those who believe that people from illiberal culture cannot adapt, and a burden to the society and a threat to the Swedish culture and the white race, that they is the white supremacists. We know how they think and how they operate. And I think these are the 3 essence of the position when you look at the debate and the discourse of migration and integration, whether in Sweden or whether in the United States, or till America. So what is the consequence of this cultural discourse that we operate in our everyday discussion of migration and integration? From this, because individual society countries are perceived as lacking agency. I hope you understand what I mean by agency, that they cannot think and act as individuals, and they are victims of their culture, that they can't think beyond their own culture, and they act in accordance with what their cultures tell them or think. And this leads often to stigmatizing difference. And if you look at the debate, I'll summarize this very quickly and say, in the debate about integration and migration in Sweden, we are not talking with each other. That's what I call a deliberative democratic dialogue, but about each other. And to quickly get into this about the culturalist dominant way of constructing the other that we see every day in the media, in political discourse, and all that stuff, that arenas. And if you look at the discourse of integration very quickly, the dominant discourse of integration is that it has failed. I think most of you hear this every day. Integration has failed. It has led to parallel societies in certain areas of Stockholm, Malmö, Göteborg, blah blah. it has led to criminality. It has created homegrown terrorism. But what are the facts? What are the realities about integration in Sweden? 60% of men and women from outside Sweden are working, are in work. That's six. You don't often hear that. Foreign-born women in Sweden have higher employment rates than native-born women in Italy and Spain. You don't often hear that. And nobody is going to tell you what is a successful integration. What is a successful integration? We always say integration is failing. But what is a successful integration? Is it the percentage of immigrants and refugees that are working, that is in place? Is that a criteria for an integrated immigrant or asylum seeker, refugee, whatever? Is that the criteria? If that is the criteria, when you say that 60% are working, then we are successful. We're doing much better than Spain, Italy, and most Europe, even Germany. Why are we insisting that integration is failing? That means the 40% can be people that came to Sweden yesterday, 1 year ago, that are still learning the language. It can be somebody who is elderly. It is somebody who is that variety of in school, in whatever they are in. Is it the percentage of immigrants that have adopted a secular ideology? And if you look at, I'll come to that. And if you look at the people that committed terror attacks both in England, in Belgium, in Paris, they were second-generation immigrants. They were not first-generation immigrants. They were secular. Most of them were secular. They were not Islamists. So the very idea that a secular person cannot turn into a terrorist or is culturalized because this person is born in France, in Sweden. Most of the Swedish kids that went to ISIS, both in Göteborg, Linköping, where I partly live, were second generation, some of them well educated. So there is no guarantee. It is not that people who are culturally Somalis or culturally from Middle East, whatever, that is the problem. I think I jumped a slide where I say, when I'm talking about this, I say 80% of the Swedes, of the society, if you look, the Swedish society, are not racist. I don't believe that. Sometimes there is discussions that somebody that don't agree with you in certain issue can be easily typified. I think teachers and even university teachers like us, we have this sometimes issues when we try to discuss certain issues that you can be easily accused of being a racist. And I think teachers have an extremely, at all levels, that is my position, at all levels, not to shy away from their enlightenment project. And I think certain issue we have to discuss. I think, let me jump now, teaching about, how can we teach about migration and integration? I think we can look at migration from a historical perspective. Migration is not something that is not a contemporary problem. It has been always historically a phenomena that has happened. People moved. That's what people, the big picture, economic and cultural globalization and rapid information channels and transportation, cheap transport made it possible for people to travel from far away to Sweden or to come and apply. So a lot of factors. The people migrate for various reasons. I can jump this. And so when migration, I think we should avoid a narrow focus. We look at the big pictures, I think. If we have a narrow focus, then we end up strengthening this culture. So I think we should emphasize more and more that migrants of different cultures also are mothers, fathers, doctors, teachers, taxi drivers, unemployed, senior citizen, with common problem and issue as any other person. They are struggling as any other person to raise their children and do all what is necessary. And this, I think, probably I'll say, when you teach, you probably try to teach. I think this, for me, this is the most important aspect. To diversify the curriculum. That what we bring to school as learners matters in how we learn. I think I'll stop there. Annika is getting nervous, but there's always one practice through. I'll do it in 14 minutes, but you end up.
Thank you so much, but you can't leave the stage without answering one question at least. So, do we have any? Do you have somebody in the audience that might want to ask?
Let's start here with the viewers here. Do you have any questions for Ali Osman?
Don't be scared.
Yeah. Everything's crystal clear. We have one question from the viewers here regarding the segregation in society. If you look at where people live in society, in Sweden, for example, how can you deal with this issue in schools that are very segregated? For example, where in schools where people attend who live very well, and how can you get closer with this issue there when they don't see the problem as clearly as many others in other schools, for example?
There is a variety of factors that impacts schools in segregated areas. And there are now processes within different communes in Sweden of desegregating schools by closing certain schools that are probably 98% immigrants and moving them and placing them in different schools. That is in Nyköping, in Linköping, and other areas. But that's only in relation to municipal schools, not in relation to private schools. For me, the problem is not where the schools are embedded in or the community they're embedded in. I think the problem is more what we call in educational sociology and number of background factors. If you look at Sweden today, if children from families with academic background, it doesn't really matter whether their father is a taxi driver, they all perform well.
Yeah, I think that is a fact that many of us as teachers see, the segregation of schools also transform into society on a larger scale.
And the easy study we are doing now, financed by the Swedish Research Council, is on, we call it where we look at students from low cultural capital, but who succeed. And we found three things, what we call three ingredients why these children are doing better than their peers who are coming from the same background. And these three ingredients is that they have come from emotionally supportive homes. That there is emotionally supportive homes, that they feel safe when they come home. Or the other ingredient element is that teachers who see them. What do I mean, teachers who see them? Teachers that do not focus on the academic aspect, but see them and provide them with with emotional support. It can be enough. I remember one student say, my teacher claps me on the back and tells me, you can fix this, you're good, du är duktig, eller you are nice. And the third one is socializing with peers with same academic ambition. These are the three ingredients that we found that makes it possible for students from low cultural capital, to succeed.
And I think it's very important also that we as teachers can focus on the things that we actually can do something about. And I think that's really nice last words from you, Ali Osman, and we will meet you again in the final panel. So give Ali a warm hand.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, a couple of years ago, somebody in this very room got a call. It was a call from Oslo, and the person in the other end of the line was telling that your organization has actually been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize this year. Can you imagine? I think I'm going to let my colleagues carry away some furniture here while I'm talking. And there is such a nice video clip of her when she receives the call from Oslo. And she's screaming and walking around, and it's such a nice video, and it's totally understandable. Of course, you get happy and really excited to get that kind of call. And the work that they have done, it was a quite small organization at the time, but after receiving the Peace Prize, of course, many people knew about it. So the organization is called International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. I'm looking at Bea now. Yeah, that's the right name. So give a warm hand to Beatrice Fihn.
Thank you.
And my colleague Lotta.
Thank you.
Just before we get on with the interview, Beatrice, I'm just going to say that we have a lot of viewers with us, apart from you here today. We have viewers from India, Pakistan, Malaysia, Cambodia, Bangladesh, Canada, Sweden, Colombia, Iraq, China, Morocco, Philippines, and Myanmar. And one saying he's watching from Earth. So good to know. Many viewers. So a warm welcome, Beatrice Fihn, to the Nobel Prize Museum. This is your museum, actually. I mean,
Yeah, I like to think of it like this.
This is a museum about the Nobel Prize recipients. So it's yours to have here. So today, as Annika said, it's almost exactly 3 years ago, since that day in October, when you, as executive director of ICAN, received a phone call from Oslo announcing that ICAN had been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. How do you remember that moment?
It's a bit blurry, to be honest. I was actually just looking at Instagram and seeing World Food Program about an hour after, with this, I think we heard 14,000 employees. They had this super slick video out, and I think an hour after we were just like, what did just happen? We were just 3 people who were employed in the organization at the time. We of course have a huge network of activists around the world, so we're much bigger than that, but it was a little bit overwhelming, and I think my first reaction was, wondering if it was actually true. And then Olav, who's the director of the Norwegian Nobel Institute, makes the phone call. He was very, so what do you think? I'm like, I don't know. and a little bit sort of overwhelmed, and then he just kind of like, well, I have to hang up because we have to go and make the announcement now. Bye. And I was like, what do I do now? And we're kind of looking at my 2 colleagues and like, was that who we think it was? I was like, I think so. I was like, what was his name? I don't remember anymore. So we actually had to watch it live just like 5 minutes later. Like this, they call very, very, just a few minutes before, so that you don't get a lot of time to prepare for when the whole world knows. But we actually had to watch it live just to make sure there wasn't a joke. And then it was just kind of huge. The 3 months after that until the Nobel Prize ceremony in December.
I can imagine. It
was
must
a wild ride.
Yes, so it must be some, maybe even memory loss from that time because of everything that went on.
I really want to do it again, because I feel like, it's really hard to know what to do. So with everything, you have to practice, right? So I feel like now I was like, okay, we would handle it better this time.
Good to know for next time. Good. But it was very true. You were awarded the prize, you came to Oslo to receive it, and you also came here to the Nobel Prize Museum that year, because all the Nobel laureates, they come here and visit us, and they hand over objects that they donate to us here at the Nobel Prize Museum, objects that have had an importance to them in their lives or in their work. And what you donated, I think we see one of those 1,000 paper cranes that you and ICAN donated to us. So, can you tell us a little bit about the story about this object and why you donated it?
Well, this comes from the story of Sadako and the 1,000 paper cranes. After the bomb was used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there was, of course, a huge amount of victims, but also a lot of survivors. And there was this little girl who was just a baby at the time of the bomb, who survived and grew up to become a healthy girl, going to school with her classmates. And I think she was around 9 or 10, she started getting sick and developed as an exposed to radiation. The younger you are at the time of exposure of radiation, and if you are a girl, it's even worse, the more likely you are to develop leukemia, cancers eventually. So she and many other children in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, a decade later, developed cancers and diseases. So she was hospitalized, and there's this old legend in Japan that if you fold 1,000 paper cranes, you get a wish. And her wish was to get better. So she folded them, and her classmates came and folded them. Of course, the story ends very sadly. She passed away. But it's become a symbol for nuclear disarmament, a symbol for peace. Around the world, around Japan, people started sending to Hiroshima and to Nagasaki folded paper cranes. It's become, you have a monument in Hiroshima for all the children that died from the nuclear bombs. It's called the Sadako's Monument for Children. And it's become like a symbol. So when we won the Nobel Peace Prize, high school students in Japan folded us these 1,000 paper cranes, and we brought them to Oslo, and we wrote the name of all the partner organizations, all the organizations that are part of ICAN on them, and spread them out over the square in Oslo, and then brought them here to donate. Just also to show that, this is not just about making a wish. There's also people who are actively working to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
So just looking at the paper cranes and working with them, I've seen you have on ICAN's website instructions for how to
Yeah.
fold this paper crane, for example.
Absolutely. We actually tried to do a TikTok challenge. We're trying to be hip and cool and be on TikTok. And we tried to do, one of the where if you can fold it under 60 seconds, and we completely failed. So that wasn't a very good campaign. It takes a little bit longer than 60 seconds to fold a very good one. I'm sure there are people that can do it. But we have an instruction video on how to do it. And you can also see at the museums, if you have been to Hiroshima or Nagasaki or will go in the future, you can see a huge amount of people that have contributed to the museums. Barack Obama, for example, has folded a paper crane and left it there, and things like that.
So those remind us of all the stories like Sadako's and many, many others. Must be motivating just to continue the struggle as well, I can imagine.
Absolutely. And I think for us it's a way to remind ourselves that these are real weapons, and there are victims of these weapons, and they are real people. Because very easily this becomes an issue that is about strategic stability, number of warheads, all these very complicated acronyms that nobody really understands, and almost like a power game, like a game theory exercise between the US and Russia and maybe some North Korea. But it's real people, it's human beings. And I think that the paper cranes and Sadako stories really show that this is a weapon that violates the laws of war. It's a weapon targeted to civilians, and it's unacceptable, and we need to ban and eliminate them.
And you do this in this broad coalition, and it's your very many organizations in 100 countries, more or less. So in July 2017, the Treaty of the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons was adopted by a majority of the UN member states, and ICAN was one of the leading civil society actors in that process. And today, 46, I believe, countries have ratified this treaty. What will happen when 50 countries have ratified it, and when do you think that will happen?
Yeah, the treaty has this kind of threshold of once 50 states have ratified it, that means putting the international law into your domestic law, so sort of confirming that your national law is now complying with this new treaty. That is when it becomes an official treaty in the sort of international legal system, and that's when it starts applying legally to these countries that have joined it. And that's a really big moment for us. And it's when, for the first time, nuclear weapons under international law, not yet all states are part of it, but for the first time, nuclear weapons will be banned under international law. And that's a huge achievement. It follows on the Nobel Peace Prize award for the landmines campaign that worked on a treaty banning landmines, the ban on chemical weapons, the ban on biological weapons, the Geneva Conventions that protect civilians in warfare, for example. This part of this long kind of effort of constantly trying to narrow the scope of the military to harm civilians, to kind of limit the room of maneuvering for governments in warfare to protect as many civilians as possible.
Could you imagine when those 50 countries have ratified it?
We know that there's a lot of governments that are just on the verge of doing it, and we're having a kind of a race right now. I think it can happen within a month. Definitely before the end of the year, we'll reach this 50 milestone, and then that triggers the official treaty sort of notification that 90 days after the 50th, the treaty enters into force. It's very legal, technical stuff, but so I think that we can get the 50th state within a month or two.
It's
before the end of the year, definitely.
Very close to this goal.
It's very exciting.
It's fantastic. We're looking very much forward to it. We're going to follow this with you. When you handed over those paper cranes to us, to the museum, you emphasized that the ICAN brings together different people and organizations all around the world. How is this kind of diversity reflected in your work?
I think it's extremely important to kind of remember what kind of unique power we have over situations. It's so easy to look at the world today and feel extremely depressed. I can't do anything. We just look at, what is Trump doing today? What is Putin doing today? And you just feel like, I can't do anything. So I think what's really important to remember is to kind of flip it around and see, what can I impact? As teachers, you have a huge amount of influence over education and children's and the vision that a new generation will grow up with. and what they think is possible. We have artists that are using kind of their skills in art to make people feel something for an issue. We have academics who are doing science and research. We are founded by another Nobel Prize winner, the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War. They came at this from a medical perspective, saying, well, as doctors, we can't fix people after nuclear war. I mean, the healthcare system will collapse completely, so we need to ban and limit them. So we're trying to create a coalition where there is scope for every person, for every country. This is not just about the US and Russia. This is, we had Malaysia ratify the treaty. They have an active role to play. We have countries like Algeria, for example, where nuclear testing has happened from the French government, that they have an active role to play. The small Pacific Island states. So not just the different type of groups of people and their skills, but also where you come from is all valuable and all kind of creates this broad movement. Because I think that that's something that we need to replicate also in other issues, that we have this kind of sense of empowerment, that I'm not just a spectator of the world. I don't just watch other people do things. I can't fix everything. I can't fix certain things, but I have to focus on the things that I can fix and the things that I can contribute to. And together, we can fix anything.
And even though you're dispersed all over the world. So, I mean, you have 570 partner organizations. How do you keep such a campaign like this together and get everyone working together towards the same goal? And maybe especially now, since you can't meet in these big gatherings.
Yeah, it's a lot of emails. No, a lot of communication, constant talking back and forth. Obviously, we are a network, so we can't tell everyone else, you have to do this. So we can only work through kind of positive encouragement, create tools and resources and say, here's something exciting happening, here's how you can be a part of it. And what we've discovered is like, one of the challenges that we have in civil society and activism is that as many people involved in a cause, is the same amount of ideas or strategies or specific angles on it. Like, people can sort of, we're going to solve it this way. No, it's actually this way that's best. No, that's the problem. You can see that in climate change, for example. There's probably 1,000 and millions of different ways that needs to be done, or something that's the most urgent priority. So I think it's really important that we try to create solutions that are broad enough to get the maximum amount of people on board. But it has to be specific enough to actually have an impact. So, for example, on nuclear weapons, ban nuclear weapons. That was sort of our idea. We can get everyone who's against nuclear weapons is kind of buying into the idea that, we need a ban on these weapons. But it's specific enough to be an actual treaty that a government has to say yes or no. So it also becomes a political thing. And again, just because I've been thinking a lot about climate change lately, if you compare it, stop climate change is a great thing to get many people on board, but it's not really specific enough in terms of how, which means that some governments who don't want to do anything can say, well, yes, and we swapped our plastic straw to paper straws, and voila, we're done. Whereas some is sort of, no, we have to radically change everything and, ban fossil fuels, for example. And I think that, you have to find that kind of sweet spot almost of being broad enough to allow everyone to be a part of it, or as many as possible. But it has to also be meaningful and specific enough to actually make a difference.
Also a very clear message and a clear goal about it. So in 2007, when you held your award ceremony speech, you said that a future without nuclear weapons is possible. And those that say that such future is not possible, they need to get out of the way of those making it happen. And what do you say to those people that they share your dream, but they doubt whether it's possible to realize it?
Well, I think that's one of the big problems we have today, is that we take the current situation right now as almost like a natural law, that the way it is now is just normal and natural. And we forget that people made decisions to make it like this. When it comes to nuclear weapons, every day there are people in power making decisions regarding this. There are, in a country like the United States, for example, Congress people approving the budgets for these kind of weapons. There are companies that are building these missiles and warheads. There are banks and pension funds investing in those companies. Like, people take active decisions to maintain nuclear weapons every day. And that's the same thing for other questions as well. Like, the way things are didn't just happen. So there are active people taking decisions. So we have a choice to either let them or to do the opposite and make active decisions to stop it from happening. And I think that can be applicable for everything. I think we have to really understand that the world is being shaped by the people who do things. And we can decide then to let other people control that, or we can decide to do it ourselves.
So go out and act.
Yeah.
That is. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen from historical movements how much impact people's power have. And I think that's very, that was also one of the reasons why we were so incredibly honored with the Nobel Prize. And not just for our work and our campaign or our issue, but also for activists around the world. So many times when you see sort of protests and activists, you feel like, oh, did it actually work? And at the end of the day, it's the leaders that take the decision, and they get all the attention. They get all the sort of, this leader signed this treaty. And we don't always put enough attention on the people who made that happen. No. And I think that without, they will never do it without the public taking action and people getting involved and people being educated about the issues. So, but we very rarely celebrate that as necessary. We only see the end result. We don't see the hard work that goes on in the beginning.
Paving the way.
Exactly. And that's not just on activism. I'm sure that's in like the way it is in teaching, for example. I can imagine that you can see the end goals of good results in exams, but you don't really pay a lot of attention to the or people outside don't pay attention to all the work that goes into that. And I think that's why it's so important to put a spotlight on that and to make sure that things like every petition people work on, or every these little seminars where only 5 or 6 people show up, and there's all these letters we send to politicians, it all matters. It all changes things.
This is truly inspirational for us all as teachers, and as how we can do this kind of inspiration or give that inspiration to them. That's also very important questions. But I would maybe we will have some question from the audience. Yeah.
We have a question from one teacher. The teachers think that you have really framed this in a really good way, and you have explained so many things. But if you were to give the teachers one advice to the future, what would that be?
Teach the kids to organize. I mean, I do a lot of I used to do a lot of lectures. Now everything is cancelled. But I used to talk a lot of universities and even high schools. And I'm floored by how smart kids are today, how aware they are. They are so, they know so much and they have very strong opinions. But I do sense this kind of lack between awareness and understanding the issues and being very passionate about it, to finding a kind of a long-term organizational strategy for how to change it. It's like this kind of impatience, and I think that's a general trend in society. We want things happen now, and you have to be very impatient in this field. But you also have to learn that this is not, you show up at one protest and then the world changes. This is really long-term strategic organizing. It's not about individuals. We all see Greta, we love her, she's amazing. But for everyone who just feels like, well, I'm not that person, what can I do? We have to understand that it's not individuals, it's organizations and the long-term work that change things. So the kind of encouraging people to be active in organizations and in communities and as a way of changing things, I think is important for also feeling that you have power and you can shape things. Otherwise, you're very lonely with your maybe really great opinions, but you just feel frustrated because nobody listened. So teach organizational, meetings and charters and, all the boring stuff about organization, but it's very, very important.
Thank you so much, Beatrice Fihn.
Thank you.
A warm hand.
Thank you.
So, welcome everyone watching from all over the world. We have this teachers online seminar, the Nobel Prize Teacher Summit, on the theme Migration and Movements. And we have just heard Nobel Prize awarded ICAN's Beatrice Fihn talk about how to build a movement for peace. So now you had a little time to reflect. And our next speaker, you will actually be able to ask questions to all speakers at the end of the program. Our next speaker, she is a professor of public health at Uppsala University. She does research on how migrant children become established in their new countries and what role the school plays in this process. So give a warm hand to Professor Anna.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and hello everyone out there in all corners of the world. And it works, fantastic. So, disclaimer, I am not a teacher. I am a doctor. I don't work that much clinically, but 2015, when Sweden received a very high number of refugees, among them 35,000 lone asylum-seeking minors and just as many children, every doctor was needed to have a look at these kids. And of course, I was trained partly in pediatrics, so I very much enjoyed it. And I've never in my life seen so many bad teeth. But you know, teeth and infections can be fixed, right? We have fantastic dentists and we have antibiotics and things like that. So that wasn't the problem. And we were really good with the infections and the teeth, but I thought that we were doing a terrible job at attending to the souls of these kids, because of course so many of these children have suffered so many terrible histories and seen things that no child ever should have to see. So I thought that we weren't doing a good job at all of that, and I will tell you more about what made me frustrated and how I then started to organize and what we came up with. But the problem is that, you know, the troubles are not really over once you've got to the new host country. Actually, even after many years of living in Sweden, and you know, my talk is called The Voices of Children, because in my research group, Child Health and Parenting, we talk to parents, but we also talk to children. And children are absolutely fantastic in youth in expressing their opinions. So this is what some Somali youth living in children have told us many years after resettlement. I don't know where I belong to or which culture I have. I did not grow up in Somalia, and here I do not celebrate the Swedish midsummer. Swedish midsummer is a big thing. It's like bigger than Christmas, right? So she really is expressing here that this is a non-belonging. And unfortunately, although I will come back to teachers and tell you how important they are, which you know, but unfortunately this also happens. There are a lot of teachers who joke about the girls' veils and ask why they do not take off their veils. They say, for instance, "Isn't it warm? Ha ha ha. Funny? No, not funny. That's discrimination." And this is something that some of the girls had to experience in their schools. So as a society, we have to get busy in getting better, because we know so much about what these children and young people need to thrive. And you know, the good news is that actually what happens in the host society is much more important than the traumas that these children and youth experience. So there's just so much good things we can do. So these are the kind of factors that are important for children and youth in protecting them from mental ill health and for promoting well-being. And I'm going to talk you through this figure and show you different examples. But safety and control, that's a lot about politics, right? Do you have a future that you can know something about? Can you stay? Can you not? Are you safe? Etc. Supportive relationships, so important with adults and with other peers. And at the core of this is identity and anchorage, right? You have to have access to your own identity, religious or ethnic or whatever identity you come with. And you also have to be able to anchor, right, in this new society. And both are just as important, because otherwise you can't be really stable. And coping with stressor and schools. And I will talk a bit more about these different factors, so you don't have to try and remember just now. The interesting thing is that you think, oh, you know, you have to be a professor and a researcher to know this, but you know what? We went to the science fair in Uppsala and asked young children and youth about what they think that newly arrived refugees need. And what we did to elicit these answers was to show them a film, and that it's called Ali and the Long Journey to Australia, which is to Sweden, but you know, still. And it's a beautiful story put together by primary school children in Australia, and it starts out with you know, the war happening, and then how the family had to get to sea, to get away, and then how they all arrived and were able to participate in the school, and then how the family reunited. Now we all know that unfortunately this happy ending is not really quite true for many refugee families, but this was for kids, right? So what we did was ask them, so what do you think someone like Ali needs when they are in a situation and arrive in a new country? And this is what the children told us. One could give them a home, food and love. Food, toys, water, breakfast, right? 6 years old. Breakfast is important, so this is what we would call practical support. To not ask several questions, let them tell about what happened, your future psychologist right there, or have a friend who understands. You'd want to have this boy as a friend, right? That's what we call emotional support. Not to be bullied or teased because one doesn't have what others have. Give them the same possibilities as for other children. That's your future activist colleague right there, I think. Have from the Swedish society, let them in, and a little part of the tax could go to them. That's your future minister there. So just asking children a simple question, they will tell you what children and youth might need, and it fits beautifully into this model, right? So they talk about these political aspects of safety and control, of importance of supportive relationships, to have a friend who understands, and identity and anchorage. That's not what they call it, but you know, this is what they talk about, social inclusion. So let's talk a bit about coping with stressors. You know, being a doctor, I like to fix problems, and these problems are not easily fixed, but there are some things we can do which I didn't think we were doing, like I told you. So what are the kinds of problems we are talking about? In terms of refugees and newly arrived migrants, one of the most essential things are post-traumatic stress symptoms. And these are, and many of you will know, but this is a reminder if you didn't, intrusion. It's called intrusion. So you get these flashbacks or nightmares, which is impossible to get out of your head, just as it's impossible not to think of a black and white cow. Don't think of a black and white cow. That went well, right? That's an intrusion. You do not, it's not just, you can't take it away. Arousal. So this is the stress, the bodily stress, this heightened level of just uncomfortable, you can't sleep, you can't eat, you're constantly looking over your shoulder. That's why it's called post-traumatic stress. And then we've got the avoidance. And the avoidance is really tricky because you want to avoid thinking about these things, and you want to avoid to get triggered by things that remind you of it. And you know what's the worst thing? That's the only way to actually get through it. You need support to actually meet your fears, but you can't do it on your own. So what did we do about it? What we did was introduced a method called teaching recovery techniques. Now, I didn't create this method. This was created by the Children and Wars Foundation and made freely available, and it is available all over the world. And what it is, it's a group intervention, and you don't need to be a specialist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist. You just have to go the training course, and then you can become trained. Also teachers and social workers become trained in this program. And it's something we have now available in Sweden, it's available in Norway, it's available in many places. And I'm going to tell you about how it came to be in schools as well. But I would like to just show you this short video, because children's voices. I'm not going to tell you how this works. I will let one of the youth tell you how it works.
هر کس به گونه مختلف به شکل مختلف از کشور خود مهاجر میشن و غربت در سر خود قبول میکنه و این راه رو پیش رو میگیره. خب طبعا در راه مسیر راه به جز از اون مشکلاتی که در وطن خود داشته بودم مشکلات خیلی زیاد هستن. مثلا ما خودم از راه یونان ایتالیا آمدم که چند شب در جنگل خوابیدم بدون کدام اتاق خود جنگل بود، در کوه بود خوابیدم تا ای که موفق شدم که از اونجا خود بکشم بیایم طرف ایتالیا. اینا رو میگین یا همش بگم؟ تا اینکه چطوری موفق شدم این که زیر تریلی رفتم، ساعتها زیر تریلی ماندم تا اینکه تریلی رفت داخل کشتی و کشتی رفت ایتالیا و اینجام که ماندم چند سالی که با همو فکر با همو چیزا بیشتر موقع که کامیون میدیدم خب همو خاطرات دوباره در ذهنم تازه میشد، همو سختی همو تا اینکه در یک گروپ شروع کردیم با این گروپ که شروع کردیم و تکنیکای اینا واقعا مفید بود تا اینکه خب گذشته و که گذشته خب آدم باید آینده رو فکر کنه. بعد تکنیکای را آموختن، چیزایی را به ما نشان دادن که بتانیم با مو افکار خود با مو طرز فکری که از قدیم داشتیم چیزایی که ما را اذیت میکنه اونا رو بتانیم روش کنترل داشته باشیم.
It's a beautiful language, Farsi or Dari. All right, so that was coping with stressors, and let's talk about, last but not least, schools and the importance of schools. And we're currently involved in an EU project where we are teaching teachers about trauma. It's called in-service teacher training. And this is what one of the teachers said. Before, it was more that the student is tired and cannot concentrate. Then, just tell the student and the parents that you must make sure they sleep well at night. But now it feels like I have to be a person who is there for the students so they can get over this, so that they can then sleep better at night and perform well at school. And what happened is that you gain an increased understanding of what trauma is and what happens, because trauma is in your classrooms. In almost every single classroom today in Sweden, there's trauma. It's just that if you don't know about it and don't ask about it, you just won't know that that's what's happening. And some of the teachers got trained not only in INSET but also in TRT, and they say, it was good for me as a teacher to have knowledge about how I can help students and how I can receive what they tell me. And I know so many teachers are so sick and tired of everyone telling them how to do their jobs or what they should be doing instead. So I thought this was really exciting that the teachers themselves thought so. And even more so exciting, I thought that the kids thought, because it's not a given, right, that you think your teacher should be dealing with these things. But they said, I enjoyed sitting with the teacher and discuss different things, opening up and solving problems together and learning how to face our fears, because that's exactly what you need to do. So finally, I would like to close with saying that I think we know quite a lot about trauma. I think we are increasingly good at having programs to offer, things that can be done in school. We're nearly not as good in promoting social anchorage, but there are promising problems out there with peer support, with social clubs, and with different initiatives. But that's what I would like to see more of, and that's where I will be doing more research. And I would like to conclude with a quote from one of the students about a teacher. I think that a more competent and knowledgeable teacher can help you to adjust. Do you understand? It is important to have a teacher who thinks more of you as a human being. I think that sounds fair enough, right? So thank you very much. Thank you to our funders and thank you to the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna Sarkadi. It was so interesting to listen to you.
Thank you.
And I think you put words on many things that I have been struggling with. Because like you, I was a teacher and then I was a principal for many years. And I have worked a lot with refugees during my 25 years in school. And I know many of you here in the room also have refugee kids. And I'm like, I would like to have known all this when I was a teacher.
That's what the teachers say.
Yeah. Wow, that's a wonderful thing to get from teachers. So we will be able to ask you some questions in the panel. So let's give Anna a warm hand. Anna Sarkadi. We talked about the peace laureates, Malala, Yousafzai, and Kailash Satyarthi. And last year, Lotta and I actually, we went to India we had a teacher conference like this in India with like 2,000 teachers or something. It was a huge hall. And then Kailash Satyarthi was there. And we also got to meet people working with his projects in the New Delhi slum. And one of them is Rupika Saran. And she sent me this video to show you. It's a like 4-minute video from them as a greeting to all of you teachers. And this is like a beacon of hope to show, because of course it's really hard. Life is so hard for them. But this organization, the Kailash Satyarthi Foundation for Children, they are really building up the kids so they can organize and do things. So let's look at the video from New Delhi.
हाय, बढ़िया। आप कैसे हो?
मुझे घूमने में परेशानी हो रही थी तो
मेरा नाम नुज़हत है और मैं कक्षा 10वीं की छात्रा हूँ और मैं बाल मित्र मंडल इंदिरा कल्याण विहार ओखला दिल्ली की बाल सरपंच हूँ। हमारे यहाँ कैलाश सत्यार्थी चिल्ड्रन फाउंडेशन की तरफ से बाल मित्र मंडल आया। उससे हमने अपने अधिकारों के बारे में जाना और उससे हमें अपने अंदर जो लीडरशिप की क्वालिटी थी वो नज़र आई और हमारे लिए पढ़ाई कितनी इम्पोर्टेंट है वो पता चला। और बाल पंचायत के माध्यम से हम बच्चों को, यहाँ के बच्चों को जागरूक करते हैं और उनके लिए हम काम करते हैं। जैसे कोविड से पहले हमने गर्ल्स सेफ्टी के ऊपर काम किया था, नशा के ऊपर काम किया था। कोविड में हमने बच्चों के लिए खेल का मैदान बनवाया था, नुक्कड़ नाटक भी किया था और बहुत सारी चीज़ें की कोविड में हमने।
नमस्कार, मेरा नाम पूजा है और मैं बाल मित्र मंडल संजय कैंप दिल्ली की उप सरपंच हूँ। और जैसा कि हम सभी जानते हैं कि हम इस वक्त बहुत ही ज़्यादा मुश्किल दौर से गुजर रहे हैं जो कि कोरोना वायरस है। और अभी कुछ समय पहले कई लोग अपने गांव वापस चले गए थे, उनको बहुत ज़्यादा परेशानी हो रही थी, खाने पीने को भी नहीं मिल रहा था और इससे हमारी पढ़ाई पर भी बहुत ज़्यादा असर पड़ रहा है। और हम बाल पंचायत और बाल मित्र मंडल के बच्चे ये ध्यान रख रहे हैं कि इस कोविड से किसी भी बच्चे की ज़िंदगी या पढ़ाई पर कोई असर ना हो और किसी का भी बाल विवाह ना हो, कोई बच्चा बाल मजदूरी की तरफ ना जाए। क्योंकि अगर इस दौर में बच्चे ने अपनी पढ़ाई छोड़ दी तो उसका 1 या 2 साल खराब हो जाएगा और जिससे उसका पढ़ाई से इंटरेस्ट हट जाएगा, जो कि बिल्कुल अच्छा नहीं है। तो हम ये लगातार कोशिश करते रहेंगे कि सभी बच्चे पढ़ाई में मन लगाकर पढ़ें और हम उनकी हमसे जितनी भी मदद हो सके हम उनकी मदद करें।
इस कोरोना वायरस में हम सभी को बहुत सारी परेशानियां हुई थी, तो हमने उन लोगों को जिनको बहुत ज़्यादा परेशानी थी उन लोगों को आइडेंटिफाई किया और हम सभी लोगों ने मिलकर उनकी खाने की ज़रूरतों को पूरा किया।
और मेरे को गर्व है कि मेरे समुदाय में ना बाल मजदूरी होती है, ना बाल विवाह होता है और ना ही बाल शोषण होता है और कोई बच्चा भीख नहीं मांगता। और इस कोविड-19 के दौरे में भी कोई बच्चा इन कारों में से कोई काम नहीं करता।
कोरोना वायरस ने पूरी दुनिया को हिला दिया है, लेकिन हमें अपनी पढ़ाई करने से नहीं रोक सकता।
So, give a warm hand to the Kailash Satyarthi Foundation. They actually made this video for us yesterday. So these are the kids living in that area, and it is an area with like 10,000 people living there, and they are 127 persons sharing each toilet. But still, we were invited, actually to one of the kids in the movie, we were invited in her home, and we were really inspired by the work that they are doing there, and it gives so much hope. So I'm going to send this video to you also, so you can show it to your students or your teacher colleagues and to anyone that you want to. Our next speaker, she came as a refugee only 5 years ago to Sweden. But not only did she learn the new language and go to a new school and like get new roots in the new country, she also built a huge peace movement in Sweden. Now she has written a book about it, and it's been transferred to a theater play at the theater in Stockholm here. So give a warm hand to Fatemeh Khavari. Welcome.
Tack.
It's wonderful to have you here, Fatemeh. How are you?
To be here. I'm really good, but I get a little bit nervous right now. I don't know why. It's the first time,
but you are among friends.
Yeah, that's why I'm actually wondering why I'm getting nervous today. I don't know. Okay, so let's make it.
Yeah, we're gonna make it together.
Yeah.
Okay, Fatemeh, so you arrived in Sweden in 2015.
Yeah.
Where did you come from then?
I'm originally from Afghanistan, but I was born in Iran as a paperless girl, and then we moved to Sweden in 2015 by family reunification. So my brother came to Sweden in 2013 as refugees or unaccompanied minors.
So how old was your father, your brother, when he had to go to Sweden?
I think I remember he was around 15, 16 when he actually forced to leave us in Iran and then take a dangerous way to Europe because I lost my oldest brother for a few months before, because we were paperless there, and it's a huge danger against people there. And my father became deported to Afghanistan in 2008. Then I didn't hear from him until today. So he was forced to move on in 2013 when he was just 15, 16 years old. Yeah.
And then the rest of the family, except for your father then, but the rest of the family could come after to Sweden.
We get here in Sweden in 2015 thanks to that we get here. It's not possible for everybody. When I remember my childhood or those days I was living there as a paperless, when I'm here because the first things actually that happened in my life when I realized that I'm different in the society I was living in was when I was stopped to go to school when I was just 8 years old.
Yeah, so you could just attend a normal school for 2 years.
Yeah. And then they stopped me because we didn't have actually the economy to continue to go to school, and otherwise, so I was illegal, and I didn't have any money, my family hadn't it, and we lost our father, so it was very hard. And when I'm here with you teachers here, so it's very both important, and also I remember my own childhood when I just dreamed about going to school instead of actually working and making the class uniforms to my friends that was in the same age, as me.
And I get always touched when I talk to you because I can't even imagine you're 20 years old.
Yeah.
Yes, and you go to, you're a senior at a high school here in Stockholm.
Yeah, I hope I'm gonna finish it. I really doing much. I have a big engagement or commitment out of school, so my teachers are really mad at me, but I think that there is many things that should be done, and that's why I do both. I don't know.
Yeah, that must be hard. You can ask me to protect you from the teachers.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And we have a large group of teachers here to protect you.
Thank you so
but
much.
education is important, and that is what you always talk about also, this privilege that it is to get a quality education. But after kicking you out of the school, what you were making school uniforms for other students, but you also went to a sort of school.
Yeah, it was actually young students from Afghanistan who was the voluntary and helped us, and actually wanted to help us to get in the society and to feel like we're human. We're just we're just children. And then I like to paint, actually, so I drew a lot. And then I loved art. I loved poetry. I started to write poetry. And when I sent it to many different organizations, they thought that they didn't know me, actually. They say that this is very unknown name on those poetry, but they say that we think that this poetry is written by a 64 years old woman who is actually experienced a lot in her life, but it wasn't the truth. I was just 13 years old when I wrote those poetry, but I didn't talk about it because I was always in the corner of the society. I was always in my own home and doing my own business.
And I remember you told a story, which is actually also in the book, about the teacher treating you really bad.
Yeah.
Can you tell the story?
Yeah, I was actually, I wanted to visit one of my old friends in my old school. Then I went there and I started to fight with a girl there, and we started to speak very politically, actually. I was just 11 years old, but she started to jump on me and say that, yeah, you don't have any right to be here. Then I just defended myself, and then I kicked out to a room, and then her mother was there, and she was in the same age as me. And then I was there very alone. Then her mother started to fight against me, and she said that, yeah, you're the reason why my family, my husband don't have any work, because you're here to take every work here, and my husband can. And I just was 11 years old, and it wasn't my business. And then I just lost my father in that way, so it was very hard to take in. And then when the high teacher came in the room, so I actually ran and stayed behind her, because I wanted really that she gonna define me. And then she turned around and looked at me and asked me if I know where Afghanistan is located. And I didn't know that, because I never asked nobody. I just knew that I'm Afghan in Iran, but I didn't know why, and I didn't know where Afghanistan is located. And then she said to me that, you don't know that, and I was wondering, yeah, I really want to do that, know that. And then she just did like that, putting her finger, and then showed me and said that this 30 in my finger, Afghanistan is located here. So it was very hard to take in, but it was the first view of my homeland for me as a 11 years old girl in Iran. So it was very hard.
That's heartbreaking, but And but you moved to Sweden after a series of events, of course. And when you arrived here in 2015, you met some other refugees and you started this movement together. Can
Everything
you tell me?
actually started when my teacher came in the school in the languages introduction program in 2016, and then she started to speak about the human rights. I never heard about it. I was feeling like I was different in whole my childhood, in whole those 15 years old before I came in Sweden. But I didn't know that everything is about inhumanization. I didn't even heard the word. And then she said, we're talking about the human rights, and every human being has rights to life, and And then I start to wondering, and I start to realize that there is rights around the world for me. Actually, this day I realized that I'm not the problem, as everybody in this world thinks that I am. The way people and the way the debate and the way the world looked at me was the problem. I wasn't the problem. And then when I got the knowledge, so I just looked around me and saw people are suffering for the things I suffered for 15 years in Iran. And then I just couldn't accept it. It was unacceptable for me. And then I started a community for people or unaccompanied minors who were experiencing the same that I did. Then we start to get together and stay against those inhumanizations laws in Sweden. And then we actually grow so fast, we couldn't even imagine that. I was in Sweden just in 2 years, and all of us was in Sweden but just 2 years, and then I couldn't speak English. I couldn't speak actually Swedish perfect. Then I just could use my hands and my body language to just make people understand that people are suffering. We are not putting the people in the center. Okay, I'm not the problem. We are not the problem. The way you look at us are the problem. And then we just start to speak with people. We come and we just touch their heart, and we just make the movement, and we achieved a lot. We achieved each other. We achieved the people's support, and we changed the law, the Swedish law, who gave
and you were sitting outside in this Swedish climate for 58
days.
58 days.
Days and nights.
And
it
nights.
was very, very, very hard, you know, the Swedish climate. But
and you were also attacked by like Nazi groups and people coming there to harass you, but you also so much love was shown.
Of course. Those 3 first days were the most terrible days for me as a person, as the leader of the movement, because I just turned back to politicians and talked to them. I demanded that, okay, stop deportation, but I actually forgot that those persons are who are making those decisions. Those people actually put us in this situation. And after Thursday, when I actually demand them come and stop the deportation, you know that there is actually going a war in Afghanistan. Nobody can say that Afghanistan is safe for people to living there. But after Thursday, so we get attacked by Nazis in Stockholm. Then I just went away. I actually changed the way, and I know that now is enough. I want to talk to people, because people are those who gonna make this change. And after Thursday, so we get together, And if we actually look at the history, so we're gonna realize and understand that every time something terrible happened in this world, it was people who made it better, who made it right, and we did the same. We asked people to join us and to support us, and they did that, and we were very grateful. They are actually continuing to do that. Of course, it's very, very, very terrible to say. I know many different refugees family who have been here in more than 5 to 6 years, but they are moving on still. They are running to other countries like France and like Germany, and I say goodbye to one of them last night. So it's very terrible. Their children are talking in Swedish. They are born here. Many of those children who has been here more than they are like 5, 6 years old, and they are born in Sweden. And when I see at them, I remember my own childhood and say, I was paperless in Iran, and it was really unacceptable. We know everyone about the situation and bureaucracy in Iran, and we know that there is no respect for human rights. But if you think and imagine that same thing happens in Sweden, in a country in the world who is world known for human rights and respecting for human rights. So it's very, very hard to experience the same in humanization in one of the most democracy and the most human rights defending country.
Yeah,
so I think it's more terrible to face those issues or those inhumanization things in Sweden than in Iran. I think so.
Yeah, you talk about like being human, also to see the human behind. And I think maybe you have helped us to understand by looking at you, by your stories, and the way, and also the way that you always said to the other young people in the demonstration, we can never, ever do any violence.
No.
Even
violence
if they attack us, violence is not a way. And you were actually awarded the Martin Luther King Prize in Sweden a couple of years ago. And you built a really strong movement for peace. And you've done so many great things, even though you are very young. But I want to end with a story with a teacher who picked up dirt under her shoe and said, this is you. You went back to Iran last year.
Yeah, then I actually went to the school and I met the teacher again. I wanted to visit her. Then when I actually faced her, so I told her that I'm back to your school and I want to tell you a story. And she asked me why and what story you want to tell me. Then I actually participated in your program for 2018.
Yeah, with the Nobel laureates, 3 different Nobel laureates.
Yeah, so I was actually, I talked in your program, the same program in 2018. And then when so if you remember, so when I actually sat in the chair on the stage, so I said that I'm from Sweden. I call myself Swedish. Front of 400 teachers from around the world. And then when I went back to Iran and faced the teachers, I said that I could actually introduce myself as an Iranian if I had the opportunity, if you gave me the opportunity. So you would be honored in 2018 to be actually present on the stage on Nobel Prize Teacher Summit 2018, but I didn't got the opportunity, and but Sweden gave me the opportunity. Then I sat on the chair on the stage and said that I'm Swedish. You would be honored if you gave me the opportunity, and I say that because I know there is thousands, and there's 100,000s of illegal Afghan refugees still they're living, they are hopeless, there is no hope for them actually, when the system are fighting against you, where the system are ignoring you. So it's hard. And I say to her that be careful, there is thousands of children left, there is thousands of people really left here in your country who you can help now, and understand that you should give them opportunity, your system should give them opportunity, because one day you're going to realize that you missed a lot. And that way I say to her in 2018.
I'm really proud that you call yourself Swedish.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Fatemeh Khavari.
Thank you so much for hearing me.
Our next speaker, she actually works with unaccompanied minors for the Swedish Red Cross. And the International Committee of the Red Cross has been awarded the Nobel Prize several times throughout history. And our next speaker, she will talk about the initiatives to benefit unaccompanied minor refugees. So give a warm hand to Linda Beskow.
I'm going to start with trying to see how this one works. Is it just... Thank you. Okay, so yes, my name is Linda, and I am a senior advisor at the Swedish Red Cross, and I work with migration and specifically with unaccompanied minors and youth. And I am going to try to talk a bit about the experience that we have in the Swedish Red Cross with working with migrant children during the last couple of years. And also trying to explain what we have been taught, and trying to see how that can also, in a teaching situation, be very important to know. So I'm going to start with this picture. And as you have heard before today, we have, during 2015, we had over 35,000 unaccompanied minors arriving in Sweden. Before this, we never had even close to this number arriving here. And also, if you see the numbers from the last couple of years, also from 2018 it was about 900, 2019 was also 902 unaccompanied minors arriving in Sweden. So we are today on a number that are a lot lower than we have had for many, many years. So the experience that we have in the Swedish Red Cross is from many of the children arriving in 2015. And we have in 116 of our local chapters are working with this group, and we have seen that there are a lot of challenges for this children and youth, but we also see that there are a lot of potential and possibilities. And that is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the challenges, but I also want to talk about the possibilities, because there are a lot. And what is in common for all children who are arriving here unaccompanied is that they are here without a parent. They are here without adult support. And that means that the adults that they meet are very, very important to them. We have seen that when it came so many at the same time at around 2015, the Swedish system did not follow. And that earlier, when someone arrived in Sweden, it took 3 to 6 months for them until they got their decision in their asylum process. Now, for the kids arriving around 2015, it took years. Some of them still don't know if they're going to be allowed to stay in Sweden or not. So this very long wait is causing severe insecurity. You don't know if you're going to be allowed to stay. Then it's also really hard to know, how to integrate, how to learn a language and how to get into a new society if you don't know if you're going to stay or not. And this has led to that many of the children that we meet do have a very poor mental health, because they have been through a lot during their flight, before their flight, but also during their time here in Sweden. And because of this long asylum process, most of the unaccompanied minors arriving here around 2015, they were about 16 to 17 years old. So when it took years before they got their asylum decisions, then they are adults. And when you are an adult in Sweden and you are in the asylum process, there are a lot of changes happening. Like you often have to move from where you were living. You don't get to live among youths anymore. You get to an adult living situation. Also, you don't have the same support from the society anymore. And also, it's a lot harder for you to get your right to stay here. It's harder when you're an adult or than if you're a child. And also they have been doing age assessments for a lot of these children. They were doing age assessment that have been very criticized and it's very questionable whether they are correctly done or not. So this has also affected the possibilities for these young people to stay here in Sweden. We have the experience that when these young people had arrived here to Sweden, they were very motivated. They wanted to go to school, they want to finish school, they want to work, they want to integrate into the Swedish society. But when it takes so long time and you don't know and you get no stability, then it's also really hard to keep this motivation and to keep happy. And another experience that we have in Sweden is that many of these children arriving here, when they turned 18 and during the time here in Sweden, many of them lost their housing. Many of them have lived homeless or from friend to friend, or they have lived on, don't know from day to day where they're going to live. Depending on the migration laws in Sweden have been changing a lot these last couple of years. I think it's changed like four times, depending on where in the system you are. So these affects a lot of these children. So when you are in that situation, if you got to the situation where you don't know where to live, then how can you focus on going to school? And this, of course, also affects how you're feeling and the possibilities for you. And also we have seen that some of these children have been exploited because of this. So what I really want to share with you is also the possibilities that we see for a volunteer in our case, or as a teacher in your case, to actually make a difference, to be able to provide support and make a better situation for migrant children. And what I like I said earlier, like they don't have adult support. This is something that means that a teacher can be very, very important person in this in their lives. It doesn't mean that you can never take the place of a parent or you can't fix everything, but just to be an adult, to be someone who can guide in different situations, right there you are a very important person. And I want to say that it's really, really important that you dare to listen, because these are children who have been through a lot, like I said, before their flight, during their flight, in their new country, and they need someone to listen to them. This doesn't mean that you have to solve all their problems. You don't have to have all the answers, but you need to listen. And right there, again, you are very important. And when you come to a new country and there is a new language and you got a new society to understand, if you are very young, you need guidance. Every young person needs guidance. But when you come to a place where you've never been before and everything is so new, this is even more important. And here is also a role where the teacher can be very, very important in understanding their new society, in helping how do I go through school in my new country, or how do I get a job after my school, or just how does different social situation works. Here you can be a guide and you can explain what possibilities you have in the new country, but also what responsibilities you have in your new country. So, and like I said, it's really, really hard to keep your motivation when you're in a new situation that is really hard, when you have trying circumstances. But as a teacher, you also have the possibility to motivate and to try to keep that motivation. But to be able to do that, you have to understand the situation that your students are in. And it's the same, I'm talking about students now, but the experience comes from our volunteers, and they have met a lot of these children. And what they say is that they have to understand where they are coming from and what are their experiences. Because if you don't understand that, then it's really hard to help. But also you need to look at the actual situation that they're in right now. Do they have stability? Do they know where to live? Do they have just basic things like computer maybe for school, or paper and pens? Do they have what they need? So, and some have and some don't. So just what is important is to understand where are you coming from and where are you right now, and in there you can make a big difference. And also to adapt your education to these experiences. Some come from countries where they maybe haven't gone one day to school, and some come from countries where they have gone to school for years. So you can't give education in the same way to someone who has never been to school as to someone who's been to school for years. So that is also something where you need to adapt when you're thinking about any kind of activity, if it's in school or if it's somewhere else, that where are they from? So in my work I work a lot with advocacy, trying to change the laws and trying to make the situation better for unaccompanied minors here in Sweden. And I think that even anybody can make a difference. Maybe not everyone can change the politics, but maybe some can. But also in your municipality, in your community where you live, it's important to show your knowledge. What have you taught from the children you learn, and to explain their needs where you live, because the politics can make a difference locally too. Like I said before, something really important, just listen, but also to take care of yourself, to be able to take care about others. And I would say, when I work with advocacy, I try to think that if I can make a change for one person, then it's all been worth it. But I think as a teacher, you can make a change for so many people every day. So I think that is something amazing, and I want to say thank you all.
Wow, that was such amazing words from you, and we will be able to ask you questions during the last session.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Linda Beskow. So, showing things in a different way can be so important for understanding, and also understanding things and in a way where you also feel things. So this is one of the teachers from our network, and his name is Trust Makegwa, and he's a teacher in Zimbabwe, and he attended the Nobel Prize Teacher Summit here in Stockholm in 2019 on a scholarship from the Swedish Institute, actually. So he's working with disabled kids and blind kids, and also introducing them both into computing and into music. And when we meet together with all these teachers from around the world, it's so many stories that are being told. And we have another one from Maruf Hassan from Bangladesh. And he actually started a school in a big refugee camp in Bangladesh. And now he's not teaching anymore, because he's a medical doctor, and due to the pandemic, the schools were closed. So he had to go back to being a doctor. Of course, this pandemic affects these kids so much. But I think he's not only a teacher and a medical doctor, he's also a great photographer. So the things that we can see from his photos, I think it's really touching. And if you take part in this network of teachers, you can share your stories and your challenges and some really good inspiration also to deal with the challenges as teachers, because it's not an easy job, right? So greetings to all the teachers around the world who follow us. And it's actually time for our last panel. And now we will take this down and invite all the speakers up on stage. So give a warm hand to Beatrice Fihn, Anna Sarkadi, Fatemeh Khavari, Ali Osman, and Linda Beskow. And this panel, please come up on stage. And you have to stand a bit apart, so we're going to place you in a corona-safe position. So spread out on the stage, please. And
Hello.
yes, are you with us, Ali?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can stand on the other side there.
Yeah.
Yep. And the panel will be moderated by Pontus. So please, Pontus, we have questions both from the audience here in the room, but also questions from Lotta and the teachers online. So, yeah.
So maybe we can start if some of you in the audience here have a question. Okay, so I will run a bit with the microphone here.
Thank you. First, thank you for all the very good talks you've had. I have a question to Dr. Sarkadi and Ms. Beskow, and it's about the young people that came alone. And it's so easy to see, to fix the facade, kind of. You fix the teeth and then it's fixed, but you still have the scars inside. And I listen to Ms. Beskow and I hear teachers listen. Yes, we listen. We hear all these amazing stories that we think, wow, are they kind of surreal? And then we hear about your story as well. And then I think about the PTS.
Yeah.
Yes?
Right.
Yes. How do we heal the scars inside? And when do the teachers' ears, when are our ears not enough? What help do they get after that?
Yes, thank you. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, you can start.
Yeah, I think you also have these different... So, yes, listening is very important, but of course there are methods, and you have to use methods. So trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, very long word, is very effective, and you can have it as a very intense individual therapy, but you can also have it in this group session that I showed, which is a lower level. It's not proper therapy. It's an intervention where you very much focus on the symptoms and you teach tools. And I always say that even if you can't change people's circumstances, you can always help them manage their situation in better ways. Although I do believe that we have to work for better politics as well. So dealing with symptoms, how to learn to relax, relaxation techniques, how to learn to sleep, how to learn to deal with difficult thoughts, and how to dare to meet your fear and get exposed. So these are specific techniques. So yes, for that you need methods. So as a teacher you have to say, this is not just a story, because if it affects the way you learn, the way you live, your sleep, your stress levels, maybe they have a tummy ache or maybe they have aches and pains, then you go, maybe these symptoms actually need some more. And then of course Red Cross has also groups, right?
Yeah, we have trauma centers working specifically with giving aid to people who have been through torture or trauma from war. So of course there comes to a limit where you as a teacher can't always heal, and that they need professional help, absolutely. We are working with that, and it's really important. But also, hopefully you can get help from doctors. And I mean, when I say dare to listen, I mean that it's important when someone tries to tell things that they hear that someone, or they feel that someone listens. But also as a teacher or as a volunteer in our case, I think you also need to know when you can say, I hear you, I really do, but also to be able to say, maybe you can turn to this place where they can actually help you working with this problem. So I think it's two different things, and many people who have been in the migration situation are suffering from severe trauma and needs professional help, absolutely.
And time does not heal all wounds.
No.
So you can live with this for a long, long time, and you can't see it from the outside. So a lot of these kids are functioning and they're going to school. But when you ask, then you can realize that quite a lot of them are still suffering from these symptoms.
Thank you very much. We have another question here. Okay, sorry.
Good afternoon. Thanks very much, all of you. I wondered what advice you might have for teachers to promote optimism and positivity in a world that students might see is facing a lot of problems and uncertainty.
Could I have a short answer from each of you, please? Just a short one. Sorry, we can start with Fatemeh, maybe.
Okay. I think that we should look at the reality. I mean, we should talk about, we should stop talking about how we think or what's our opinion in things. We should be actually very carefully with, or not carefully, we should have our direction and our opinion in what the reality is. Of course, I mean, when we look at this world, because it seems not to be too much happy for people, but if you think that there are people around the world who are actually living still, they need more and they need us. I think I was like that. I was on zero and a time when I just faced those people and I just remembered my own trauma. And I went through that by thinking, okay, we can't just stop, because if we have the historical perspective in this world, and we're gonna make it. I think we should just understand that it's our reality, it's not about our opinion.
Thank you so much. And Ali, would you continue? Very short answer.
Yeah,
Okay.
very short.
Very short answer.
I think there is no magic wand to deal with this issue. It's not only about how we organize our system of schooling, the concepts we operate with, and to be positive and see the whole student, not only as teacher focus on the academics, probably see the emotional needs of these students, which I think that theme is very common in all our talk, that the emotional aspect of these children's life and every day in and out of the school. Now that's probably the short question.
Yeah.
Thank
you very much.
Me? Yeah. I think it's, we sometimes get so caught up in the negative that we forget to look at what's really positive. And I think there's so many more positive stories right now that's happening. People are doing amazing things, like all of these Nobel, achievements. We are making huge progress in society, and it doesn't feel like it when we read in the news. But I think we also have to remember that the way the algorithms works, you click on things that make you angry. So media gets an incentive to write things about what makes you angry. Nobody wants a happy story today. People want to be outraged and angry. So it distorts our view of what reality is. And I think the teachers have a huge responsibility of showing also, not just today, but also over history, how far we've come. Today women have more power than ever today. We have more conversation about anti-racism today than we've had, ever. We have communities that never had voices that suddenly have voices, and it's a huge thing that is happening right now, and it's hugely positive. And the fact that we can be angry and we can be upset is a good thing. So I think that we need to focus on that, and also I think that the best way of feeling hopeful is through action and through doing things. Doing things builds sort of a sense of achievement, accomplishment, purpose. And I think that the fact that we get so passive today by all these kind of negative stuff is really dangerous for our mental health.
I think that to keep someone motivated, that they need to feel that they are the main force in their own life, to feel that they're part of what's happening. So to feel that even in the small and in the big, that they are able to give their opinion and be able to create what they're doing and be a part of it. So I think in our work as volunteers, but also in school, that they feel that they are part of it. I think that's important.
Anna?
Yes, I heard something very wise from a professor in sustainable development yesterday, and he said, wicked problems cannot be solved, but they can be managed. And I think that was so helpful, because otherwise you get stuck in this negativity. But if you can manage, then you can do something. And of course, as a doctor, I really do believe in the power, in the magic of meeting a person, heart to heart, and just a conversation, just touching like that can really mean a lot. I think so.
So I think we end this with those words. So I would like to you all to give a warm hand to Ali, Linda, Beatrice, Anna, and Fatemeh. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So Lotta, where do people watch from? What countries have followed the program?
Well, there were the countries I told you before. I came up with more than 20 countries now, and we added up some new ones from Ghana and in Egypt and some more countries.
Yeah.
So basically from all over the world.
That's
really
amazing.
Nice.
So this is the Nobel Prize Teacher Summit from Stockholm, Sweden, and we celebrate the new Nobel Prizes, and we discuss migration and education. And we're so happy that you want to take part in this global network of teachers, because teachers really do matter, and that's what we've heard here today. So thank you so much for coming, and I will see you soon again. So thank you. And before we leave, we are actually going to have some music here on stage. So please, can I get up Aref, Rasouli, and Wirenblad? Where are you? Come up on stage. Because these guys, they have actually written a song yesterday that we can listen to. It's their own song, and they haven't even given it a title yet, so we don't know what it's called. So this is going to be really exciting. And so Aref, do you have a microphone? No? Can I get the microphone? Okay. So you were born in Iran, just
Yes.
like Fatemeh.
Exactly.
When did you come to Sweden?
It was about probably 9 years old. Or, years ago.
Yeah. So, and now you met Simon. You go to a music school in Västerås.
In Västerås.
Yeah. And I asked you to come here to perform. So, have you found a title yet for the song?
What should we call the song?
Okay, let's decide that afterwards together with the audience, okay?
Perfect.
Okay, so give a warm hand to Aref, Rasouli and Wirenblad.
I came alive for a moment and we danced all night. Take all that you are and let it be a spark. I just wanna stay all night long. But in my memories the love is gone, the love is gone. Bleeding from my heart and feeding on my fears. You're feeding on my fears. You're bleeding from my heart and feeding on my fears. You're feeding on my fears. Look at me this way, never lost or astray. Your lonely days, let them fade away. Bleeding from my heart and feeding my own fears, feeding on my fears. Look at me this way, never lost or astray. I'll be your color, yeah, I'll be your light. Your lonely days.
Wirenblad, Aref, Rasouli med deras egen låt. Tack så hemskt mycket. Vi ses. Hej då!